Welcome everyone to this talk show, Driving Gender DEI in Water Management with Technology. And this is the second of two WaterWoman table conversations. And today we will be discussing how innovation and technology will create appeal and new entry points for women and non-binary people, while providing solutions to turn the current crisis into an all-gender inclusive, water-positive, resilient future. And Water Rising Institute is launching its first program, WaterWoman Project. And this is happening right now at World Water Week. And putting all gender voices front and center, Water Rising has announced a call to action to study the gender gap in water management in the US, UK, and Europe to build on the World Bank Water's ongoing work in this field. So my name is Åsa Wallin, and I'll be the host of this conversation and talk show. And with me here on stage, I have Jennifer Steffens, Director of Strategy and Marketing, SUEZ, and Victoria Johnson, Global Equity Director, HDR, and Valentina Daniello, VP, Product Management, Wastewater Pumping, Xylem. A warm welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great pleasure.
If we think about today's subject, driving gender DEI in water management with technology, what's your take on this subject? We'll start with you, Jennifer.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I read the other day that there are only 6 countries in the world that have laws that have equality for women and men in the workplace. Only 6. So that tells me that while we've made a lot of progress over the last few years, there's still a long ways to go. Right. At SUEZ, we really think that we can achieve this diversity and inclusion through technologies. One of the primary things that I think of is just flexibility in the workforce, right? So no longer do we have operators that have to sit in their chair staring at, the SCADA system all day long. Instead, we can be remote and simply with a touch of the screen, right, be able to control these from just about anywhere. So having these technologies available will open up the workforce for all genders, but also the younger generations that are coming in.
Thank you. And Victoria, what's your take on today's subject?
Sure. So we like to really coin the term redefining innovation through diversity, equity, and inclusion. So as we talk a lot about global imperatives around ESG, climate change, resilience, as we know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and women and water, ensuring that we're achieving gender equity in our sector is paramount. And technology is a great lens in terms of how we do that. So we believe that the infrastructure solutions that we develop now are going to affect all of us for generations to come. So how do we redefine how we innovate? And to Jennifer's point, as we leverage hybrid solutions in a post-COVID world, as we think about how are we using GIS mapping and data tools, how can we use these innovative technological tools to achieve gender equity and ensure that we're having more women in water and in leadership roles?
And more of that in just a short moment. Valentina, what's your take on today's subject?
Thanks. First of all, I think that it's quite well spread that innovation and technology is very well fostered by generally diversity and inclusion. This has been demonstrated through different studies by consultancy companies, also universities. But I would like to say my own view, also given some experience that I've developed in the field, but also in the previous times as a continuous improvement leader. I would like to say that women can help a lot on the table of innovation, also because of their social and sensitivity skills, empathy, and a lot of active listening. So I'm not saying that women needs to be the whole group, but there needs to be a very good part of women on the table to think about innovation and technology, again, to enable that listening of the things that are important for innovation and technology.
Well, thank you. And could you tell us, how are you working with peers or other external partners toward tech adoption for better water management?
Thanks for the question. I have multiple examples, but I'll talk about a couple of examples in Xylem. One thing that we are doing, there is a team of people that's called Innovation Lab that is led, by the way, by a fantastic colleague of mine called Sivan Zaming. She's the leader of this team. What they do is exactly this. They work with partners that can be non-profit water organization or can be consultancy companies, startup or small companies to identify technologies that might be interesting for Xylem. And in doing that, they also run voice of the business to identify within the overall company, within Xylem, where there are potential need to explore more partnership and understanding better how technologies can be used. That's one example that is out of my area. It's a colleague of mine, but more specifically in my area, as I lead product management, we also have within Xylem a new product development process. And in the early phase of the process, the better we bring on board partners or customers and distributors to do voice of the customers, the better we have a chance at the end of the process when we launch the product to have a better technical adoption. So these are two examples that I think some answer could take much more time, but I'd like to leave more to my colleagues.
Do you want to add something on this, Victoria?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So at HCR, we're really excited about a new white paper that we've recently published by the name of The Private Sector's Role in Advancing Environmental Justice and Partnering with Water Utilities. And that was a great partnership with Xylem, Stantec, Greeley and Hansen, and an organization by the name of the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. And in that paper, we talk about the private sector has to be committed to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, and advancing environmental justice, advancing gender equity, and how can we utilize the global resources and multidiscipline resources that we have in terms of advancing technology, in terms of how are we providing utilities with the resources, the information, and the data needed to understand the unique experiences of women in terms of, again, we all know that this is a male-dominated industry. We're also looking to bring more diverse and younger people into our workforce as we experience the silver tsunami. In addition to that, how are we also engaging women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses to help us in terms of addressing some of the gaps in terms of contracting within water infrastructure. So very excited about that white paper. In conjunction to that, also had the pleasure of working with the Biden administration in the US over the last year and a half on informing legislators around the bipartisan infrastructure plan and how through infrastructure, water and other peer sectors and transportation and the built environment, how can we put people back to work? How can we ensure that we have more gender equity and diversity within our infrastructure workforce? So just a couple of examples of how we're working together across sectors to ensure that we're producing a more equitable and gender inclusive workforce and environment.
Yeah. You know, I really appreciate that you brought in policy, right? And how policy is going to be so important in promoting diversity and inclusion for across the board. Right? At Suez, we're a really old company. We've been around for about 160 years. And when you're really old and you're really big, sometimes it's hard to move. Right? Sometimes it's hard to move. But what we've done over the years is we've taken, as in the role as owner and operator of utilities, we've been able to build some internal tools that help move things forward more quickly, right? And so these tools, such as remote operations, decision support platforms are now available outside of Suez, right? Mm. So as a private company that was able to be more flexible, we want to offer these outside, right? And so we do that through our group that's Smart and Environmental Solutions, with the whole purpose of bringing more technology into to our utilities to help them on their digital transformation.
Great. Very interesting to hear all of these examples. Could you also tell me a little bit Do you believe that more women and non-binary people would help solve the problem of tech adoption? And why, if so? Jennifer, let's start with you.
Oh, absolutely. No question, right? Like, this shouldn't even be a question anymore. But I'll say this, that our brains are fundamentally different, right? The female brain has a larger hippocampus, which means that we are optimized for intuition and retention, right? The male brain has a larger parietal cortex, right? Which is optimized for action, right? And these are fine. These are great things. But what this means is that we communicate differently, and more importantly, that we solve problems differently. And it's only through having a diversity of thought that we're going to be able to continue to grow these smart infrastructure solutions.
Great. Victoria, what do you want to add on this?
Yes, well said, Jennifer. Women certainly do bring a unique and diverse perspective to any environment that they're in, but particularly within the water space and the water workforce. As we know, with regards to conversations we've had this week with regards to the impact of childcare and in terms of even safety and unique lived experiences that women tend to have in different countries and different environments and different organizations. And those unique experiences help inform a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusions and priorities that we're trying to shape. So we're always so quick to get to solutions, but before we get to solutions, we need to make sure that those solutions are informed with data as well as the lived experiences of women around the world. So to Jennifer's point, women certainly do possess emotional intelligence, and as typically mothers and wives and aunts, also bringing to bear that personal experience with our professional lives, women have a unique perspective to add that'll really help us get to the type of future that we're trying to create for all of us.
Thank you, Victoria. Valentina.
Yes, both my colleagues have said it all. I will somehow reinforce what I said at the beginning. I do believe, as both my colleagues already highlighted, that women bring that active listening skill and emotional capabilities that are really, really fundamental at the table to listen diverse groups, even again, not male and females, broader groups, and make a solution into actions. That's something I strongly believe, and experience has demonstrated it.
Great. And now the last question. Those who listen to this today, what is your message? What needs to be done? Let's start with you, Valentina.
I think within our companies and personally, we have to do all our effort to attract, develop, hire, and retain our female talents. And in all those phases, there is different strategies. We could talk a lot about those, but that's something we have to really focus as companies, as individuals, as leaders. Develop, attract, retain, and hire with specific strategies behind. Yeah.
Thank you, Valentina. Victoria.
Sure. I would leave us all with, again, let's redefine how we innovate. Yeah. And what I mean by that is let's be gender inclusive with regards to how we define innovation. So again, as we tackle, again, climate change, ESG, resilience, let's embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, embrace gender equity in terms of how are we being inclusive with regards to the multidisciplinary solutions that we developed, technology-led, data-informed, as well as I like to include, the importance of community, ensuring that before we get to solutions, let's talk to to communities that we're impacting, young women, of course, young women coming up through the ranks. Again, all of us are male counterparts, non-binary. Let's talk to all different communities to ensure that as we develop solutions for the future, we want to ensure that we're being inclusive, because that's the only way we're going to get to the type of equitable future that we're all looking to achieve.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Victoria. And Jennifer, your last.
I said it the other night, and I will say it again. We just need to be better. Be better, right? We need to be better at purposely recruiting all genders into the workforce. We need to be better about training our current workforce on the new technologies so that we can retain them. And lastly, we need to be better about promoting ourselves. We're doing some really cool things in the water industry to solve the water crisis. And I don't think we brag about that quite enough.
Well, thank you so much for these interesting insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.